Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, a former San Diego County Sheriff's deputy says he's guilty. Richard Fischer admits in court that he abused women while on duty. And calling out a local congressman, a Muslim rights organization wants Duncan Hunter investigated over controversial comments about his time in war.
For people like me, I guess working minimum wage jobs and all that, it's a struggle. It's a real struggle here.
A struggle for low-wage workers in the Imperial Valley, why economic growth in places like El Centro is hard to come by.
When it talks about body mass index and kids' scores, what does that really mean? And those are tough conversations to have.
And it's a problem that hasn't budged for years. High obesity rates among San Diego's kids. Tonight, we take a look at the reasons why. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. It's Monday, September 9th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. For 2 years, San Diego County Sheriff's Deputy Richard Fischer maintained his innocence. That changed this morning in a Vista courtroom. KPBS investigative reporter Claire Tregesser tells us about the plea agreement reached just before the trial on sexual misconduct was set to begin.
The charges Fischer pleaded to in total carry a maximum prison sentence of 5 years. As part of the plea agreement, it will be up to a judge to determine whether he has to register as a sex offender. Back in 2017, 4 of the women who accused Fischer spoke to KPBS's Amitha Sharma. Here are 2 of them describing what happened.
He put me in the car, and as he's putting the seatbelt on, he fondled me and said, "I hope your husband doesn't mind." And at that moment, I was just thinking, well, what's going to happen? Am I going to, get raped? I mean, that's not a normal interaction with a cop.
He and his partner responded to a burglary that I had at my house back in 2016. And after they did the report, later on that evening, it was probably around 11:30 to midnight, there was a knock on the door, and I looked through the peephole and saw it was him, so I felt safe to open the door. He asked me how I was doing, and I said, not very good. And he said, you look like you need a hug. And he just grabbed and hugged me. And I froze at that point. I really, part of me thought, is he here to help me, or should I be scared?
A year after those interviews, Fischer surrendered to authorities. In the end, he was accused of assaulting 16 women. District Attorney Summer Stephan declined an interview request, but said in a statement the plea deal meets the wishes of the overwhelming number of victims. Next, Fischer will be sentenced in the criminal trial. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
Thanks, Claire. There will be more to come on this story. In addition to the criminal charges, Fischer and the Sheriff's Department face 21 civil lawsuits related to this case. KPBS's coverage on this story includes a look at how citizens' complaints are handled by the Sheriff's Department. You can find that and coverage of today's plea deal at kpbs.org. Late this afternoon, the FBI confirmed a criminal investigation is underway into the boat fire that killed 34 people off the Channel Islands. The criminal probe involves the FBI, Coast Guard, and U.S. Attorney's Office. They're looking into various safety issues, including whether a night watchman was on duty. A woman from San Diego was among those killed in the fire. Police in Chula Vista are treating vandalism at a church as a possible hate crime. Staff found graffiti Sunday morning at South Bay Pentecostal Church on D Street. Some of the images are too graphic for us to show. They include vulgar language and satanic references. Police are reviewing surveillance video that shows 2 people on the church property during overnight hours. A group is calling for an investigation into Congressman Duncan Hunter, and this in light of his admission that he probably killed hundreds of civilians as a Marine serving in Iraq. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman was there as people made their case outside Hunter's El Cajon office.
Lock him up! Lock him up!
The local chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations says they've collected more than 8,000 signatures, asking for the House of Representatives to investigate Hunter.
I mean, it's clear that the level of things that he's done, he should resign. He's not a good representative of this county. Someone who's literally a war criminal should be in prison.
Hunter made these comments on the podcast Zero Blog 30 in May.
So I was an artillery officer, and we fired hundreds of rounds into Fallujah.
Right.
Killed probably hundreds of civilians, if not scores, if not hundreds, of civilians. Probably killed women and children, if there were any left in the city when we invaded.
Navy SEAL Eddie Gallagher was on trial for war crimes that included posing for photos with dead enemy combatants. Hunter defended Gallagher, saying he's taken similar photos while in Iraq.
I've served for 24 years, and when I went overseas, I gave respect to the enemy.
Yusef Miller was in the Navy and did tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He says Hunter's admission that he took photos with dead enemies is no accident.
Oh, now we see all this Islamophobia coming out, that this is a pattern for Duncan Hunter. So it was really, it's hurtful in general just to disrespect a dead person. I was in a medical field in the military.
A spokesman for Hunter says this is just simply an orchestrated stunt in order to provide support for one of Hunter's Democratic challengers, Ammar Camp-Najjar.
Hunter's spokesman also called CARE an anti-Semitic organization that openly supports terrorism.
To say that we're terrorist-aligned and anti-Semitic when Muslims are Semitic peoples, it makes no sense, and it shows his level of racism and Islamophobia.
Legal experts say Hunter posing with a dead body is not automatically a crime, and the statute of limitations would make it unlikely the congressman would ever be charged. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
And Hunter might soon have another challenger for his congressional seat. This time, a former Republican congressman says he's interested. Darrell Issa, who represented North County's 49th district for 18 years, says he will likely run. Issa was at the state GOP convention this weekend. Issa says he's asked the Trump administration to cancel a stalled nomination to the U.S. Trade and Development Agency before he declares his candidacy.
There's nothing wrong with his voting, but he is injured in a way in which he, according to most polls I've seen, all polls I've seen, he cannot win re-election. And as a Republican, I don't want to lose a seat that clearly is a seat that we need to have to get back to the majority.
Duncan Hunter's East County seat is more solidly Republican than the 49th seat that Issa gave up. A U.S. soldier from North Carolina is the latest to die in the war in Afghanistan. The casket of Sergeant Ellis Barreto Ortiz was returned to the U.S. over the weekend. He was among 12 people killed in a Taliban car bomb attack near the U.S. Embassy. He's the fourth American troop killed in Afghanistan in recent weeks. President Trump says he was planning a secret meeting at Camp David with Taliban and Afghan leaders, but he called it off partially due to that attack. As Camila Burnell reports, the canceled meeting just days before the 9/11 anniversary is being criticized.
President Donald Trump pushing back on concerns from both Republicans and Democrats over his now canceled plan to host Taliban leaders at Camp David for secret peace talks.
We had a meeting scheduled. It was my idea, and it was my idea to terminate it. I didn't discuss it with anybody else.
Some members of the president's party praising Trump for walking away, an announcement he made via Twitter over the weekend, saying, quote, "They admitted to an attack in Kabul that killed one of our great soldiers and 11 other people. I immediately canceled the meeting and called off peace negotiations."
Negotiations between nation states can happen there, but a terrorist organization that doesn't recognize nation states, that kills innocent women and children, that denies women the right to really even be in the same room as their husbands is just a minor part of the terrible things that they do. To have them at Camp David is totally unacceptable.
Democrats also raising concerns.
To bring the Taliban on the eve of the 18th anniversary of September 11th is about as outrageous as it gets.
The Taliban responding, saying the move would not harm anyone else but the Americans themselves. But they did leave the door open to future talks. Camila Burnell, KPBS News.
Another legal blow for the Trump administration's asylum ban at the southern border. Today, a San Francisco-based federal judge reinstated a nationwide block of the third country asylum ban. The policy would have prevented people from applying for asylum in the U.S. if they had first passed through another country. In July, a federal court of appeals narrowed the injunction to just California and Arizona. But today's decision once again blocks the policy nationwide. California grocery store workers are set to decide whether or not to strike. After weeks of negotiations, union leaders say they've reached an agreement. United Food and Commercial Workers Local 770 represents nearly 50,000 workers at more than 500 stores. A strike would have impacted Ralph's, Albertsons, Vons, and Pavilion stores. Union officials say the agreement includes a raise. The results of today's vote are expected on Thursday. California's Imperial Valley is trying to boost its economy, but it faces major obstacles. As part of our California Dream collaboration, KPBS's Amita Sharma looks at how the region is trying to use the state's brand to attract people and businesses, while many of its current residents are just scraping by.
Lyft driver Juan Hernandez is a few rides into his shift on an oppressively hot summer morning in Imperial County's El Centro.
I just keep driving around until someone messages me.
The 21-year-old accounting student became a Lyft driver only 6 days earlier. It was an act of desperation. The $800 he earns working part-time at Lowe's, combined with the $300 his pregnant girlfriend brings home from working as a McDonald's cashier, aren't enough. But so far, the Lyft gig isn't working.
Sometimes I could travel from El Centro to Brawley, drop someone off, and they only pay me $3, and that's like 20 miles wasted.
Many of the Valley's residents haven't taken to using ride-sharing, preferring instead to use taxis. As Hernandez drives through the Valley, he thinks about quitting the Lyft job, but feels like he has no other options.
With the Imperial Valley lacking better and greater opportunities like other big cities offer, I mean, this is the only opportunity I could get, you know?
At 18.7%, Imperial County has the highest unemployment rate in California. The county's boosters argue that figure is a result of its seasonal agricultural economy.
We're at our highest, and then that completely flips in the wintertime.
He concedes, though, that he's never seen the unemployment rate budge from the double digits. He says he's working to change that by selling what he believes is the area's biggest asset.
We're in California. But guess what? Everybody wants to be in California.
Even if the weather is in the triple digits, as it is here, 4 months out of the year.
Phoenix and Palm Springs, Las Vegas. So there are areas that have similar weather, and people go there because they're resorts. And so we need to market this place.
I think they need way more than a marketing plan.
Gerber says those cities' histories were vastly different than Imperial Valley's. Palm Springs became known early on as a playground for the rich.
Las Vegas was nothing. It's an imagined community in which the creators of Las Vegas, the developers, could create whatever kind of place they wanted to create. And they had a latitude within state laws to put in gambling and so forth. There was no population.
The same can't be said of Imperial Valley.
Imperial County has a population. It has a history. So you can't just turn that into something completely new, reimagined.
But the Imperial Valley Economic Development Corporation's Kelly says the area can market its strengths.
We have land. Okay, it's very competitively priced and it's available. We have water. So it's the most abundant source in the southwestern United States is the water that we have at the lowest price in the United States. Number 3, electricity. We have the lowest cost electricity rates in California. And then labor. So we've got a labor force that's ready and willing to work. And when you look at housing, biggest issue probably in California today is workforce housing. Imperial County has very affordable housing.
A typical home costs $212,000 in the county, and a brand new luxury home with 4 bedrooms and 3 baths is selling in the $350,000 range. The reaction from San Diegans looking to move to Imperial Valley is
wow. Complete wow. They're dumbfounded on the difference in price.
With a median income of $44,000 in the Valley, those homes are out of reach for most local residents. As Imperial County aspires to diversify its economy, it's hoping to establish itself as a renewable energy hub.
And that's been great for the economy, and there's a lot of prospects that that's going to continue to grow. But they don't hire a lot of people, right? Once you build out the solar plant or once you have a geothermal plant working, they don't have a huge staff.
Other hurdles remain. The area's workforce is not highly skilled. A diversified economy is still a wish. And then, of course, there's its location.
You know, it's in the very corner of California. It's very hot down here. It's very flat. It's not always, visually appealing to be here.
Lyft driver Juan Hernandez was born in Imperial Valley. As hard as life is right now, he still believes he's better off than his grandparents, who used to pick vegetables in the valley's fields. He does see the economy slowly changing for the better in the Imperial Valley, but not for him yet.
For people like me, I guess working minimum wage jobs and all that, it's a struggle. It's a real struggle here.
Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
We have more on this story on the KPBS Midday Edition podcast, and you can find more from the California Dream Project at kpbs.org. They're the men and women who help in emergencies, but today San Diego County leaders announced help for first responders. Supporters came together outside the county building downtown. County Supervisor Nathan Fletcher and first responders are proposing a first responder behavioral health program. They say the goal is to offer confidential, stigma-free mental health support. A 2017 Ruderman Family Foundation study found that nationally, suicide among this population is a major concern.
To know that we lose more first responders to suicide than who die in the line of duty means that we have to do better at everything we're doing to address that problem. And I think the reality is a lot of folks will not access services in their own department. Their departments are well-intentioned and they're doing great, and we should applaud that. But by creating a countywide program that's confidential, I think that this is something that can try and help.
The Board of Supervisors is set to vote on this proposal tomorrow. This vote is scheduled to coincide with the eve of the September 11th anniversary. New numbers are out when it comes to childhood obesity in San Diego County. And as KPBS science and technology reporter Shalina Chetlani shows us, not a whole lot has changed in the past decade.
At the YMCA in Southeast San Diego, you might expect to see folks exercising or even children on the playground. But today, the YMCA was hosting something a little different, a discussion on childhood obesity. It was hosted by the county's Childhood Obesity Initiative.
I'm happy to applaud the fact that the childhood obesity rates in our county are starting to dwindle, but when we still have 1 in 3 that are still either overweight or obese, there's still so much more that we should do.
County data from 2005 shows the childhood obesity and overweight rate in San Diego was about 36%. Today, it's 34%, according to a new report from the county, which was highlighted at this conference. So I asked Paige Metz, the health and physical education coordinator for the county's Office of Education, why it's taken 14 years for this rate to move down by just 2%.
We've seen pockets where it's decreased, where there's been a very specific and very strategic approach. The problem is that we need to make sure that what we're doing is countywide.
The San Diego County's Office of Education, Metz says, works with school districts to inform them on best practices for physical education and nutrition, but it doesn't have the power to tell these districts what food to put on the menu, to tell them how to define the types of exercise kids should have, or what type of outreach they should have for parental education.
I think the county has done a good job of really reaching out and getting community members to start the conversation. And I think that as time goes by, now we need to make sure that those conversations don't just happen at that leadership level, but how do we make sure that there are really, there's teeth and actions down below it?
Still, Dr. Wilma Wooten, public health officer for the county, says that 2% decrease took a lot of work. She says over the last decade, more children have moved from the obesity category to the overweight category.
Changes don't happen overnight. And since 2006, we've made investments into the Childhood Obesity Initiative. And those are the changes we feel have contributed to the decrease, ever so slightly, but it's a slight decrease that we are seeing represented in the report that's been issued today.
Wooten says the county is trying to expand its outreach efforts and that public schools try to follow the federal dietary guidelines for school lunches. Shalina Chetlani, KPBS News.
There's major progress on a wildfire that threatened homes in Riverside County. The blaze near Murrieta is now 90% contained. A much larger fire, though, is now burning up north. The Walker Fire is burning in the Plumas National Forest north of Lake Tahoe. It burned more than 40,000 acres and is just 7% contained. We're starting off the work week here in San Diego, not as hot or as humid as last week. The cool down was appreciated Sunday in Del Mar, where the Helen Woodward Animal Center held its annual Dog Surfathon. And this weather pattern is set to last for a few more days. Marvin Gomez has tonight's forecast.
Happy Monday, everyone. I hope you're having a great day so far. Thanks for staying with us here on KPBS News. And overall, we've seen quiet conditions during the last couple of hours. A little bit windy, and that's because we have a trough moving through the region, bringing us cooler temperatures. And in terms of the marine layer, we are going to see a thick layer for tonight and also as we head into tomorrow morning. Speaking of tonight, conditions will be partly cloudy. Temperatures coming down near 66 degrees here in the metro area. As we take a look across the rest of our region, Oceanside 65, Ramona 54, and Borrego Springs, temperatures will be in the upper 60s. As we head into our Tuesday here, you can see pretty much the dip in the jet stream, how it'll bring that cooler flow of air from the north across Southern California. So that's something that we basically need to keep an eye on. The heat will be fading away. For tomorrow along the coast, San Diego 75, Oceanside 78, a couple of clouds there in the afternoon still. And as we head inland across the higher elevations, Mount Laguna 70 degrees, Borrego Springs 96 out there. And overall, from now all the way through Wednesday, we are going to see those gusty conditions across the region. There is even the potential for fire across the higher elevations and even power outages across portions of the Southwest. As we take a look at your extended AccuWeather forecast for the coast, we are going to see those temperatures in the upper 80s as we head into the middle of the work week. Heading into late week, we are going to see an increase in temperatures. High pressure system once again building here. A ridge joining us as we wrap up the work week, and we're definitely going to be getting in the 90s once again inland with partly sunny conditions for Friday. Across the deserts, we are going to be in the mid 90s for the next few days, getting into the triple digits as we head into late week. And across the mountain here, we're going to see as well temperatures increasing to the upper 70s as we head into the later half of the week. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather's Marvin Gomez.
More than a week after being hit by Hurricane Dorian, desperation is growing in the Bahamas. The most devastated areas are the Abaco Islands and Grand Bahama. CNN's Patrick Ottman shows us how communities are left unrecognizable.
To get to the places still cut off by Hurricane Dorian, we have to go by boat. We've been traveling now for about 2 hours by boat. It's the only way to get here. This is our destination, the easternmost end of Grand Bahama Island. We know that it got hit really hard, but not much else. The road is still closed here, and we have not heard how the people here are doing. We really don't know what we're going to find here. We head from Freeport to McLean's Town, the last settlement on the eastern tip of Grand Bahama. Dorian filled in the channel and scattered cars throughout the small harbor. We have to navigate around the submerged vehicles. Yeah, we're going over a car right now. It's a car underwater there. McLean's looks like a war zone, and there are fatalities.
Everything is gone.
People like Eva Thomas's relatives who remained and lost their lives. You know, you think about the people who stayed behind, what must they have gone through?
Yeah, and I think about it because I had a nephew, and 3 of his kids died in the storm, and my heart is broken. I said I could imagine the terror that they were faced with before they passed.
McLean's has been wiped off the map. It's difficult to conceive the force that could cause this kind of damage. It's just otherworldly to think the winds and the water could bury so much of this town under broken trees, broken houses, and we really don't know what is underneath all of this rubble. It'll probably take weeks or longer to dig out and find out what is buried here. All around us is an eerie quiet. It is the sound of a town that has died. Alex Carey is haunted by the sight of his cousin's dead body.
She was then swollen, like, you know, when a dog get hit and swell up to ready to burst. That's how she was, swollen.
The Bahamian government says the death toll is officially 45. But add up the missing and dead from small towns like McLean's, and the true loss of life seems higher, much higher. What little help arrives here comes by boat from other Bahamians. These people brought water from Abaco, also ravaged by the storm. The rubble tells the story of lives cruelly interrupted. A shoe, a broken teapot, an award from a church. Mervyn Thomas tries to recover what's left of his town, a town he no longer recognizes.
Man, I tell you the truth, I kind of feel lost. Lost because the place, everything, you know, just look, you know, totally different. You can't describe it. They expect nothing like this, man, honestly.
For so many here, all they have left are the things they carry.
Heartbreaking devastation there, and that report comes to us from Patrick Ottman. The damage in the Bahamas has forced thousands of people to evacuate by ferry to the U.S.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, calling off peace talks. What is next for the longest war in Afghanistan? Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/eveningedition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.